Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Men and Sex. I'm your host, Mr. Wood. This podcast is all about normalizing the taboo conversations, the things that most men don't get to talk about. That's what we like to talk about here. And on this podcast, I'll bring in teachers, I'll bring in everyday men, and we'll discuss stories that haven't been shared before or perspectives that many people don't know about. And today we are going to dive into some subjects that you most likely have no clue that they exist. And I'm excited to tease them apart, go into them. And this is something that's really been coming forward for me lately, which is bringing back the sacredness into sexuality and questioning where that ever went and why it ever went away. And the guest today is someone I met in real life, and I'll share some of that story at a very potent experience. I would say a life-changing experience for me. And they were one of the curators. Her name is Hannah Haezal Elledge. She's a sacred sexuality educator, ceremonial space holder, and ritual artist, herbalist, death doula, embodiment and somatic intelligence mentor, and does intimacy coaching with men, helping men become better lovers, and so much more. I know this about Hannah. Hannah, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ian. Mr. Wood, I appreciate that. And-
I was laughing with Hannah before we started the episode because I was just saying that there's so many of these things in her repertoire that are infinitely deep. Even something like an herbalist is infinitely deep. And then a death doula is infinitely deep. We could do whole episodes on all of these things that you do. And I think these are potent pieces that you carry to do what you do and to hold the ritual spaces that you do. Now, before I dive into the story of how we met and kind of the things that I brought you here to the show to talk about, what brought you into all this ritualistic ceremony, intention, and depth that you've spent so much of your life committed to?
Hmm, I love that question. For me, it was really born out of a need for purpose, for a meaning to my life, to a way of understanding the pain and suffering of the world. And um, I've been a lifelong environmentalist, and it really started out of a lot of grief around the way that we're treating the planet and a desire to help humans heal our relationship with the earth. And so part of that led me to exploring the relationship between the feminine and the masculine and just working with my own grief, my own emotions, my own body led me into yoga, embodiment, um, meditation, studying, working with the elements, communing with nature more deeply, and really opening up experiences of transcendental consciousness.
Will you give your version of what it really means to make something or be in ritual?
Yeah. So different people might describe it in different ways. One of my teachers is Isis Indria from the Academy of Oracle Arts. And the thing about rituals is we do them all day, every day.
Mm,
But the way that I work with ritual and the way that she teaches is really about bringing our attention to our intention so that we're in
mm,
divine co-creation with the things we're doing.
mm. I love that. That's so simple. The attention and intention together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're bringing our conscious focus and presence and awareness to what we're desiring to create or experience. We are activating more of our inner creator to influence reality into the expressions that are more desirable.
So for the listeners, I met Hannah at an experience here in Washington, and I had been hearing about temple nights. This is something that I've been hearing about, and
Mhm.
in different ways, in different experiences. And so, what was my projection of it at first? So, I had heard about ISTA, which is an international school for the listeners. You can look up ISTA. It's probably the biggest one that goes into sexuality in a sacred way and brings like this ritualistic understanding to it. So, I had heard about ISTA, I had heard about temple nights, but I had never been to one. And I was, on this path of learning about my own sexuality and sharing and teaching with men. And I was like, I gotta go to one of these experiences. And so when I moved back to Washington, I reached out to friends and said, hey, do you know about any of this going on? And one of them sent me to what ended up being an event that Hannah was leading. And it was a potent experience because I didn't know what to expect and I didn't know what was going to happen. But ultimately, it was a theme of a temple night. But something that seemed special about this one was it wasn't going into the full depths of sexuality that I project many temple nights do. So
Mhm.
for the listeners, some of the temple nights, like you go into these ritual experiences, but you and in some of them you go all the way into intercourse or sexuality in some of these experiences. And so I felt like this was a good stepping block to go into one where that wasn't something that was going to take place. And at this experience, what it started out with was a lot of ritualistic and intentional, where we're bringing our attention and intention to interacting with people in the way that the space was held. Hannah started it with one of her partners in a very ritualistic way. We were given instructions, and there was a structure to the whole evening for us to not only get to know ourselves more, but interact with other people more. And
Mhm.
consent is obviously involved, asking for what we want, communicating different things. And before I go through the whole story, I would just love to hear about what these events mean to you. What is this curation, your passion for bringing people together in this way? Before I go through the whole experience, we can work our way through it.
Yeah. Well, there's many, many layers to really come into relationship with the depth of what temple culture is or temple nights are, what a temple itself is in this context. There are many, many different kinds of temples all around the world. And the ones that we are currently holding are sensual arts temples versus sexual arts temples. These originate in ancient times in numerous cultures, and they were a place for people to come and to commune with the deepest parts of themselves. And so, at the heart of these temples is intimacy, not sex.
Mm,
And so, it's really about coming into what does our soul need, what does our body need, and coming into awareness that we are expressions of the divine, each and every one of us. And that includes our bodies and that includes our emotions and our sexuality. And so temples are created with those awarenesses for people to come and experience the divine within them, which is often very present in our sexual experiences. Many people refer to their sexual experiences as being very transcendental, cosmic, spiritual, enlightening. And there's a reason for that. So, the idea with our temples is that we are offering people a stepping stone because our culture has really, really offered a lot of stories and narratives of shame and fear and judgment around our sexuality. So, our sexuality tends to be really repressed, and that lives in a lot of people's nervous systems. It can make them feel really scared or uncomfortable to enter spaces like this.
hmm
So, we strive to create an environment where it's just a baby step into how can I be more raw, more authentic, be seen and connect in more of a soulful way rather than through the mind, which most of our spaces culturally are oriented through connecting through the mind rather than through the body and through the heart.
Mm, I love that so much. I wrote that down. What does my body need? And how much of a journey that has been for me to explore, to have a relationship with my body in a way that I can even ask that question and have any information to work with as an answer, you know?
Mm-hmm.
For
Yeah,
so
so many
long.
people are like numb. They're living from the neck up and they have so numbed and dissociated from their bodies that it takes sometimes people a lot of work to even figure out that their body has communication, that it has needs, it has desires. And unless they're absolutely screaming at them through pain or lust, you know. So,
And that's what really started my journey was being in men's work and realizing, being asked questions about where do I feel these emotions in my body? And I was just like, what do you mean, where do I feel these emotions in my body? What are you talking about? And I could go back. I had a post where I did a photo with my head chopped off and like how I wasn't living in this part of my body and how that really sent me on a journey. And I think that's an important piece to really start with here for the listeners because it's for me, it was one of those spaces to drop more into that relationship. And I've been on that path of practicing having a connection to my body where I can actually relate to it and be like, hey, body, what do you need? And obviously, the best example that some men can connect with is like being super tired and my body needs rest, you know, that it's so loud that it's like, oh my gosh, I need to just pass out. But that there's like infinite messages that we can receive from our body and infinite subtleties, especially when it comes to sensuality and sexuality, that our bodies can be speaking to us. And a lot of those are yeses or nos or what we're truly available for.
mhm,
And
absolutely.
and that's become one of my greatest passions on this platform is talking about how we as men have to learn how to listen to our bodies.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's easy to say. And, what's in the way of that? What I find working with folks is there's a few key pieces that are in the way. One is trauma. Trauma is usually one of the things that causes us to dissociate. And the thing about it, some people are like, I don't have trauma.
Yeah.
But I would argue that pretty much everybody has trauma. And that's because we carry ancestral trauma. If you had ancestors that fought in wars or were in a genocide um,
Or we're
any
sexually abused.
or were sexually abused, there's so many different ways. It's like something like 1 in 3 women have had been sexually abused in some way. And if you think about go 1 generation back, 2 generations back, you have sexual trauma in your lineage. So um, I think the trauma piece is a big part of it. And what goes hand in hand with that is our comfortability as a culture with emotions. There's really strong cultural narratives that say emotions are bad, they're dangerous, they're an expression of weakness,
Waste of time.
they are too feminine, they are too wild, they're uncontrollable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can
Yeah.
extrapolate, there's just a ton of messaging around it. And so, in order for us to open up our listening to our bodies, it really requires a willingness to feel, a willingness to
Mhm.
feel not only sensation, but emotion, and learning to expand our capacity to hold ourselves in our emotional experiences when many people haven't had spaces where they felt safe to do that. A lot of us received lessons as kids, especially men, of like, toughen up, put some dirt in it, like buck up, suck it up, be a man, etc. We know all those tropes. And So it's sort of repatterning our nervous systems to know that we are safe in our vulnerability. And so that takes a process and it takes titration and commitment.
It's so interesting because it's such a simple statement to say the willingness to feel. And yet, the willingness to, most things that have been repressed or not felt, and there hasn't been a willingness to feel, is because they're not quote unquote pleasurable. Their uncomfortable, their grief, their sadness, their fear, their shame, their, loss, not feeling good enough. But those ends up being such a barrier that is, if I'm not willing to feel those things, I'm going to numb that out. Well, I'm also going to numb out my pleasure.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
That if
Yep.
I'm numbing it all.
Yep.
And I feel like it's one of my favorite reasons why I like working with sexuality because I feel like the carrot is big enough to dangle that says,
Yep.
you want to feel more pleasure? You want to feel more fulfillment and satiation in your sexuality? Because I know you care about it. I know it's important to you. All right, well,
Mhm.
this is part of what has to happen.
Yep.
You've got to learn to feel again. All the
Absolutely.
things.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very true. And, it feels like, interestingly, I started out my work working with women. Started out as a womb priestess and supporting women in their womb healing. And over time, spirit kind of redirected me to working more with men and helping them come into relationship with their bodies, heal their nervous systems, work with emotions, things like that. And I realized that spirit was like, this is how you help the women, helping the men. And it's interesting though, because I still serve all people in all bodies. And uh, what I find is that there's a greater willingness from the men to step into this work than there is from the women at least in my immediate experience. And I think that
Wow.
has a lot to do with the male sexual drive. And it's not that I think that women have less or don't have a sexual drive, but I think there is a lot more fear and trauma that's numbed it out, that a lot of women feel like they can just live their lives without it.
Yeah.
So they're willing to just keep avoiding it. Whereas men, it feels like they feel the starvation more intensely.
Oh my God. I can't believe I'm about to do this, but I'm feeling that I got to go down this path with you. Um, I carry a belief that in the way that you just described, kind of like working with the men has an impact on the women. I carry belief that a lot of these teachings around sexuality being sinful, bad, wrong, the distortions of these old teachings were in a huge way to take out the power of women and then as well as the powers of men.
Mhm.
That a lot of these stories, and we look at, the teachings of whether we look at the Bible or whatever, it's like the only mentions of women is like belittling in some way, or it's not glorified anyway. There's no talk of Mary Magdalene or anything like that, and that I think that that's been a huge hit because I'm bringing this up because one of the stories I dislike the most is like this story that men want sex way more than women and that sex is only for men and da 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 da. There's like all these stories that I feel are like rippling out of this narrative that
Mhm.
happened so long ago that's been a huge ripple effect of why women are where they are, which is underpleasured, unconnected to their womb, unconnected to their pussies, all these things. And then now we're just looking at this story where we are today, and like all these narratives are running, but I believe that is actually not true. It's just thousands of years of all this stuff that we've seen that's got us to where we are. And now we're in there's this story that is going around of like, oh, men and women and whatever.
Mhm. Yeah, one aspect of ritual and magic, if you want to call it that, is one of the strongest forms of magic is spell casting. So it's literally just conscious use of our word, is another way of putting it. And the stories, the narratives that we live inside of, we give them power with our word when we create them. And, that's in the Bible. It's like in the beginning, there was the word. And so it's interesting to examine what the narratives are and where'd they come from, who do they benefit, and why might those narratives be in place. And one of the things this ties into something that we were talking about earlier about numbing the negative emotions and
Yeah.
simultaneously getting less access to your pleasurable emotions
Yeah.
is one of the things that I witness in our culture is a superficiality. And I think that comes from ancestral trauma of having the roots of our ancestry cut off with a lot of immigration and severing identities from our ancestors to build a new identity on new lands, for those that are part of these lineages that I'm a part of. And um, so it feels like this superficiality that we experience in our culture is informed also with this consumerism of this need to chase, to go get the quick fix, the quick hit. And it's very mechanical and it's very shallow. So a lot of people are having really shallow sexual experiences. They might have, a quick, rapid, little intense burst of an orgasm. Woohoo! Like,
The
but
crotch sneeze.
there's so much more than that. And it's about Shakti, it's about Eros, it's about these deeper currents. And when we liberate that energy, it's just life force energy. And when we liberate that, that is our access to power. And so there's a really good reason to suppress and shame people's sexuality because you're effectively shaming and repressing their power, their intuition, their connection to their own divinity, and to their discernment, because our instincts are really held in our sexuality centers. And it's hard to lie to them. They have a deeper knowing that our minds sometimes can't attune to.
Hmm.
There's a deeper wisdom that makes us harder to be lied to
Mm.
when our sexuality is really online.
Damn.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like
So there's lots of layers to this.
I've even heard a lot of women that are not on the same path as you, but similar paths in the knowledge that they're gaining and the things that they're learning. And I often hear them say that they like the different things that they can feel. And one of them that I often hear is I can feel and know when I meet a man if he watches porn or not.
Hmm.
And that one's kind of, that's just one of them, but I've heard this and I feel like that's in alignment with what you're talking about with the deeper truths
Hmm.
that people are attuned to.
Yeah.
And
It's
go ahead.
it's called gnosis. It's our inner
Yeah.
knowing. And when we have shut off our body wisdom through numbing our bodies and our eros and our ability to let emotions flow through us, we cut off our inherent gnosis, our innate connection to the divine, our inner wisdom is really, really stifled. So instead, we're trying to figure things out on a much more heady, rational level. instead of in deep communion with our heart's wisdom and our body's wisdom of what is really right and true and healthy and beautiful and loving. And we see that in a lot of the ways that our decisions are made, even in day-to-day companies, as high up as the governments, where things sometimes make rational sense. This is a good decision, but according to who? Does your heart say so? I don't know about that. So, in our emotional body, opening up to these deeper currents, these deeper layers of our emotional truth is highly vulnerable, but it also holds incredible charge. And if you can open those spaces up that are shamed, that are repressed, that are scary to reveal, that is where you can awaken the most intense, orgasmic energy that you've ever felt. And that's real erotic charge because it's truth. And it's truth felt in the body.
It's crazy because I can share with the audience and with you, I spent a lot of my life numbing. My choices were booze and pain pills. Those were my things. That's what I got down with. That's what me and my friends were, everything was drinking and, a lot of it was doing pills.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started this journey feeling very much from the head, the neck up, to reflect on my journey is profound to how much more alive I feel. Like there's been 4 times on this call already where my body has just shot electricity like through my spine, across the back of my arms, the hair standing up on my arms. I just feel so much more vitality and aliveness. And I think that that's one of the things, particularly men, are lacking so much of is feeling fucking alive
Mm-hmm.
and not
Absolutely.
just a drone like walking through and I drink the coffee and I smoke the cigarette and I go to work and I have a relationship where I get a crotch sneeze and it's super shallow and we don't know how to relate.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much death,
Mm-hmm.
It's so much deadness, the dead zone in different ways. And through this, what we're talking about, whether we're talking about ritual, ceremony, bringing attention and intention together, truly is a path to bring us back to life. I know it from my own experience and just being on this call and feeling those things happen that was not something that would happen to me before. My body felt very dead, very numb.
Yeah. Hmm. Just want to breathe that in.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we look outside, I just got back from Albany. And no offense to Albany, but um, wow, that place just felt like death to me. It was so much smog and concrete, and everybody looked sick and ill and depressed and unwell, like deeply, deeply unwell. And that's Albany is not an anomaly. Like that's actually the case in a lot of places. And right now we see in the world so much death and destruction. And death is an important part of life.
Yeah.
And so death in and of itself isn't wrong or bad, but
Yeah.
why are there's like an anti-life energy that's happening. And I really feel like that's worth examining in each of our hearts. Like how are we contributing to this energy of
Mm,
anti-life?
mm,
And a big part of that to me is it feels like trying to kill the feminine, feels like trying to murder the feminine. Like right now we're literally bombing children in other countries. And what is more precious and innocent and beautiful than a child? And to be able to murder children is really intense. And Um, so how can we come into a relationship with the parts of ourselves that we're trying to kill? Are we
Mm,
trying to kill our inner child? Are we trying to kill our inner mother?
mm.
And one of the things that you mentioned in our earlier conversation made me really feel into how many men are carrying mother wounds.
Ha.
And a lot of times that's our core imprint of the feminine is through our mothers. And if our mothers were unhealthy, unwell, wounded, in victim
Yeah.
consciousness, then a lot of times victims become the best perpetrators. And so if our mothers were in victim, had unprocessed, unhealed trauma, then they were likely traumatizing their sons and their children. And so how many men are trying to get validation through their mothers or trying to subconsciously kill their mothers because they're so angry at her? And so maybe there's some room to process our rage and our grief around how we wished we would have been mothered and be able to come back into open our hearts back up to the divine love of the feminine.
Mm,
And if that happened, I really feel like we'd be living in our hearts and that would change the world. And I think we would really see an end to war. So I went off on a little
oh no,
tangent. I feel
yeah,
like I would be remiss to not name these
yeah,
things.
yeah. And I think I'm segueing back into my experience with you because so much of this, I've been waking up my body and I'm still working on waking up my heart. I'm still working on opening it and having more access to the information that can be found there. And I feel like the body is a good place to start because there's a lot more body than just the heart. And in some of these practices that were happening at your sensual temple night, I wanted to share some of them with the audience because I think that these are great things to pique the interest.
Mhm.
Which one of my favorites that I've done so many times with other people since the event was we started and we were doing these different practices where we walked around the rooms and then we'd randomly stop in front of a person and we'd have like a practice to do with them, whether it was, some sort of looking or touching and or even smelling. And then one of the practices was to be in a group of four people and ask the other three people to touch us in a specific way.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it was like we walked around, we found groups of four, and we had a certain amount of time that it was me as an individual asking three people to touch me in a specific way that I got to decide and they got to say if they were open to it or not.
Yeah.
And for me, it was very platonic. I was with three men and one woman.
Mhm.
And so I felt very platonic in it and just like it was a stretch in itself to be there. But these practices, I think it's been so pivotal for me to learn how to separate everything I've sexualized.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think touch is one of those things that's been very sexualized, especially from one man to another man. Like it's
Mhm.
so quickly sexualized into meaning homosexuality of some kind.
Mhm.
And once again, this is another piece where men are numbing themselves because, oh, I can't be homosexual. Like, I can't do that.
Mhm. Yeah. And how much does that impact the ability to foster brotherhood and brotherly love? If you're so afraid to touch another man because you might be perceived as homosexual, you're really putting yourself in a very narrow box, very narrow lane that can hinder your ability to receive love from your brothers. And that is so needed, so needed, especially when a lot of men didn't receive affectionate love from their fathers. To have the opportunity to heal that through brotherhood is an absolute gift. And, while we're examining things, like, why don't we examine the fear around being perceived as homosexual. What
Totally.
I found in my experience of being intimate with women sexually for myself is that women, when you are in a sexual or intimate experience with someone of your own gender, they become a really powerful mirror. In a way, they're another you. And so, for me, being intimate with a woman was like, it brought up all my discomfort with her genitals, which was really my discomfort with my own genitals at the time. And the stories I had around yonis being gross or kind of icky. And it really was confronting for me to have to deal with all of that. And so I feel like it's the same for men. When you look at another man, do you see yourself and are you able to love him?
Yeah, it's been profound for me to bump up against any of those things in myself. Like at that event with you, there were many layers of finding myself in fear and being like, what am I afraid? And just like stories, just interesting stories of like, well, if I'm with this person and they're this sexual orientation, well, that puts me in danger. And I'm like making these stories up. I don't even know if the guy,
Oh, so you mean you're casting other men as having perpetrator energy?
I don't even know if the
Right?
person's,
You probably don't, but there's a way that men, what I found just from my experience is asking men about these things. I've run many of these temples and also done a lot of one-on-one work with men. And one of the things that I commonly hear is a sense of distrust and not knowing if they're going to be safe. Because, and I really think this gets into our culture of non-consensual domination. Dominance is beautiful and sacred and powerful when it's done in consensually and when it's done in a way that has integrity and
yeah,
love.
yeah,
But what we experience on a global level, systemic level, what we experience in school, what we experience with our parents, what we've experienced in the military is non-consensual domination. And so literally being violated and having that be the expectation that you're willing and will allow it. And so a lot of men don't feel safe in other men's presence, especially if sexuality is even remotely hinted at.
yes. Yes, I experienced that. And what it was potent for me was to continue to just catch that in my body and relax a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and just be like, it's all
I'm
good.
safe. I'm okay right now, right here. Nothing.
All
There's no
good.
tiger in the room. Yeah.
Yeah, chill.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself, once again, I feel like these are different layers or entry points of gaining more connection to my body and no longer being numb.
Mm-hmm.
Because those feelings, so often numbness is in connection to contraction, which is like bracing for danger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of what I was feeling is like contraction and bracing for danger and that relaxation and in that practice, becoming more attuned once again to what my body is speaking to me.
Mm-hmm.
That is that deep wisdom that I can have a relationship with that is so pivotal and important in the bedroom in particular that I think so many men are lacking, which is attunement to their body, which is attunement to the other person's body.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. The piece around there's a few things that are coming up for me with your share, which is one, that part of our relationship to the feminine is also our relationship to the unknown. And so really examining our relationship to the unknown and how that corresponds to our relationship to control. And when the variables of what's going to happen are unknown, you know, oh, wow, I have a fear response. Okay. So let's notice that. Secondarily, okay, I'm having a fear response. In my family and in my culture, I've been taught to pretend I'm not afraid.
Mm,
So let me shove this fear back in my pocket and try to muscle my way through and pretend I'm not afraid right now. What if instead we brought that fear into the center and said, hey, I notice I'm feeling a little terrified right now. Whew, and this feels really vulnerable. I'm actually kind of terrified and I kind of want to run out of here. And can you hold me in this? I don't know what I need, but maybe like someone to hold my hand or offer me some reassurance, or maybe just like come sit outside with me for a minute and get a breath of fresh air. It's like, what does that part that's afraid need? And when we can bring our emotions into the center and give them a voice, then we allow those parts to feel loved, to be reintegrated, and to also share their medicine. And it becomes a portal to intimacy.
mm,
It's like, oh, now I can connect with your humanity because I've felt that before too.
mm.
Now that puts me in my heart, and wow, I love you so much. Thank you for sharing your vulnerable, scared parts because I have those too. And I wasn't telling anyone about mine either. you know?
I think so much of these conversations is about enough understanding to change a value system.
Mm-hmm.
It's about saying enough words or experiences that say, hey, it's really worth putting in the effort and the discomfort. This is something that I've been doing lately when I invite men into the trainings I offer. I say, are you willing to face challenges and discomfort? Which is
Mm-hmm.
like, most times when you're wanting someone to, be a part of something, it's not about showing them the discomfort. It's like, no, don't think about that. Just think about what you're going to have. And I'm like, are you willing to face challenge and discomfort?
Mm-hmm.
Because if the answer is a no, then there's not enough understanding of where you're going and the pain of where you are. I
Mm-hmm.
think so few men really have a sliver of comprehension of the pain that they exist in because of this disconnection from self, from body, from energy, from eros, from deep intimacy. And all of these things are needed, that those bridges have to be walked across to get into the true depth that is available within intimacy all the way to sexuality.
Absolutely. Yeah, to get into the juiciest, deepest, I call it soulgasmic experiences, we have to do that work. And as for a lot of us, at some point, the universe forces us to. We can try to avoid it for a really long time, but a lot of times our lives will create more and more distress, chaos, disruption to try to shake us out of these old patterns that aren't serving us anymore. And so we can either resist the natural path of evolution for our souls, or we can lean in and say yes. And it's even if it's hard and just uncomfortable to lean in and say yes, it's actually in the long run easier and less painful than not doing it. And I think it's funny too, because emotions largely last between like 6 seconds to 3 minutes. And then they shift, they change, they just do.
Yeah.
So a lot of us are living our lives avoiding 3 minutes of discomfort.
Mm. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And doing that repetitively and blocking so much satiating.
But it gets easier. And people don't realize too, like I talk about having grief gasms because I've had experiences now, like a lot of times now, my emotions and my orgasmic state of being are so intricately woven together and morphing in this psychedelic process that is grief and giddiness and laughing and awe and rapture and tears of gratitude and just this kaleidoscopic mix of emotions that when we learn how to be with that discomfort, we learn how to be with grief. Grief can become so beautiful, so beautiful. But when we're afraid of it and avoid it, it's actually really scary from that vantage point. But when we're in it and learn how to be with it, it's just another dimension of love. And if we can really be with that, it inspires so much awe and healing and gratitude. So I think it really takes a reframing, like you're talking about, like what's necessary in these paradigm shifts. It's really a reframing of knowing that these aren't things to be afraid of. And even though they're termed as being hard and uncomfortable, you build a capacity to be with discomfort, which in a weird way makes the discomfort more comfortable.
Hmm.
Paradox.
Hmm. So, speaking to maybe someone more at the beginning of their journey, how does bringing in more sacredness to sexuality, more ritual, more ceremony, more attention and intention, bringing those together, what are some ways that men can utilize this very easily? Like today, they can just bring more attention and intention into their masturbation or sex with a partner and connect more to the sacredness and going towards depth and awakening the body. What,
Mhm.
with your extensive background in ritual arts and in these sacred teachings, what could be something for men to hear?
Mm. It can be very simple. I would suggest if you're beginning to purchase or create, make your own ritual candle
Mm,
that you can place in your room or your home. And before you choose to engage with yourself or another person sexually, light the candle, but light it with attention and intention. Fire represents the ear of the ancestors. It is uh, represents truth. It represents authenticity, alchemy, purification. And so when we light the fire, we are being witnessed by the fire. One of our oldest ancestors is an element of creation. And so it's sacred. All fire is sacred. And so to acknowledge that you are lighting a sacred fire, and then to make an invocation, to invoke something. So that meaning setting your intention out loud. So maybe your intention is to touch in with your grief. Maybe your intention is to embody your king. Maybe your intention is to explore yourself like a curious little boy with innocence and freedom and play. And so creating an invocation, sacred fire, I light you in this moment with an intention in my heart to open up my erotic potential. Whatever you choose you want it to be, but just using the power of your word, creating your own inner clarity around what you want to practice or experience, and light the candle. And then when you're finished, blow out the candle with gratitude. It can be as simple as that.
mm, I love that. And I love to point at how simple these shifts can be because learning how to, as men, especially I think when we're in self-pleasure, it's so easy to be in monotony, in patterns and habits, in go-tos and the shallow, you know? For a lot of men, it's just, oh, I know what videos I like to watch, and I go press play. And then I sit in the chair and I do this for 5 to 8 minutes, and then I'm done.
Mhm.
And it's like just shifting intentionality and where I'm putting my attention in the subtlest way has such profound impacts, especially if we look at the long game and over time, time and time again, making a shift so subtle and bringing in a candle and having an intention like that is a massive change as far as intention and value systems once again.
Mhm. And I really recommend it also if you're being intimate with a partner, a lover, and instead, maybe inviting them to set an intention with you. So you can bring your leadership to the moment and say, I'm desiring to have an intimate experience with you tonight. What would be of the greatest service to you, or what are you most desiring tonight? And maybe that person wants to ravish you or be ravished, or maybe they need some nurturing, tender care, or just like a caressing, sensual massage. A lot of times people think that they need to have penetration or the orgasm in order to get that sense of satiation. But what I find doing sensual arts temples is that people are so charged up afterwards, literally glowing with the biggest smiles and brightness in their eyes just through pleasure itself and allowing the pleasure to grow in your body without needing to expel it. And I see a lot of men in their intimacy, especially in their self pleasure practice, really using masturbation more as a form of stress relief.
Oh yeah.
Isn't wrong or bad, but I would invite the men listening to explore other ways to develop your stress relief practices and coping mechanisms. And pleasure is a big part of it. And so it can be really beneficial. Like, go get a massage, give yourself a massage that is teasing, and actually don't touch your genitals, just tease them, or and see how much arousal you can awaken in your body.
Yeah, I think for me that's been a huge part of turn on and arousal being something other than just for sexuality or intercourse. That I find myself being turned on and aroused throughout the day now, but it's not about me needing to go penetrate something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that part of my body. It may be me penetrating with my words or writing or creating or something like that. But the more that I've brought in that sacredness and that intention and that attention of how can this be something that is bigger than just a finish line has changed everything in the way that I'm coming back to life, how much energy I have, how passionate I am, my ability to collect the wisdom from my emotions and go through them and go on to the next thing in a good way. Um,
Something that I'm hearing in that is a piece around also what I perceive as our conditioning around productivity.
yeah,
And for a lot of people, they're orienting to their sex as another thing on their to-do list to check the box on to get that little hit of like, oh, I finished something. And the ancient practices of Tantra are a lot about surrendering the outcome, surrendering the destination, and really coming into peace and presence with exactly what is. And this is sex is a moving meditation in a lot of ways. It's a place for us to focus on our breath. It's a place for us to be conscious of our thoughts, to do our best to suspend thought or make them very spacious, and to really meditate and bring our full presence to our sensations. And So to treat sex as a form of meditation really shifts the game in a lot of ways to helping us. It's a mirror for the rest of our life. If we can't be present in sex with ourselves or a partner, we're going to really struggle to be present in the world. And so it's the moment to practice surrendering where I need to go, where I need to be, what's coming next, how long is this taking? Is it done yet? Like quick, 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 go, go, go. And that's deep nervous system repatterning. And it's important.
If I'm not present in sex, I'm probably not going to be present anywhere else. Wow. I really felt that one. And once again, I'm so grateful to be focused on this path because it's such a great place to start and put my attention and intention of learning how to be more present and in my body, more spaciousness between thoughts, more aware of my nervous system, my breath, open or contract, like all these different things. What a great place to learn those things and
So juicy.
then bring them into the other areas of life so I'm more present everywhere and more with more
Mhm.
intention and more attention. And I think this is the beautiful gift of bringing sacredness into sexuality, into the bedroom, whether it's with myself or a partner, that, yeah, learn there.
Absolutely.
Bring it everywhere else.
Absolutely. I think the last thing that I would love to say about this inquiry around the sinfulness versus the sacred is that, from my perspective, in my practice, every single thing in the world can have a sacred expression. And it becomes sacred through our orientation to it. It's not so much about the thing that's happening, but how we're relating to the thing that's happening. And a lot of times, the things that we're deeming as sinful are just the things that our culture, parents, teachers, church, whatever has told us aren't welcome, lovable, or acceptable. And I would offer that everything that exists is part of our humanity, and we can find its exalted and sacred expression and bring it back into wholeness through our loving awareness, our acceptance, and our integrity.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your magic, your art with us. Is there is there any way that men can work with you?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I invite any of you that are listening that may be passing through or visiting Seattle or living in the Seattle area. You are formally invited to join us for any of our community gatherings at the Temple of Sacred Arts. And if you are resonating with things that I shared today and curious about diving deeper, you're welcome to check out my website, whichiawakened.com. And I do private session work, one-on-one work, and hold group containers, small group containers, work with couples. It's pretty expansive. So feel free to reach out, and I'd love to support you in whatever your goals are around the things that we've talked about today.
I'll put those links in the description as well. I look forward to your next event.
Me too. Yeah, we're hoping to manifest, to build a temple on land is our intention here in the coming years. So if you feel inspired around supporting that work, feel free to reach out on that end as well, because this work is so healing and so beautiful. And creating a really perfect space for that is our vision at this time.
All right. Well, I'm going to reach out to you. I got more to say. So Thank you,
Beautiful.
everybody. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope that there was a piece here for you to bring some sacredness, some intention, some attention to your sexuality, to your intimacy, and just to your way of living. More episodes to come. Take care of yourself and keep it sacred.